As a student at A.B. Lucas High School in London, Ontario, Greg Bride helped out with some shows. But a career in theatre wasn't really a goal. That changed, though, and when he figured out what he wanted to do, he went for it. It took some time and a lot of work, but Greg got there. This is part one of our resource stage conversation with Greg Bride, head electrician at the Avon Theatre, Stratford, Ontario.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Greg Bride, thanks for joining me. So I guess we were just talking that we will start with who are you and what's your job right now?
Well, my job right now is I'm the head electrician for the Avon Theatre for the Stratford Festival. So each venue has a head, and to say that I'm the head electrician is meaningful in that there's one electrician that has to head up all of the electricians. To say that there's one electrician that does all the shows is a complete misnomer anymore.
Right.
Now the festival is big enough, the season's big enough, and the shows are big enough that it's very much a team.
Right.
So at the Avon Theatre, I am the head of the team.
So what that. So I guess just in case somebody is watching and they don't know the terminology. So when you say a head electrician, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go out and wire people's houses. You're not that kind of an electrician. You're an electrician in the theater sense.
Yeah, the closest thing is we're very much in the entertainment industry.
Right.
We have no actual permitted status in terms of industrial or electrical or residential wiring status.
Right.
We are very much held under the same rules and regulations, and that's a big part of my job is meeting all the ESA regulations. That's all the responsibilities that I have as the team leader.
Right.
In fact, that's a great deal of what I do is drawings and coordinating and making sure that the designs come in. But really, the biggest part of what my job is the coordination. I am the one that keeps things coordinated. I am the conduit between the technical director, who controls the flow of the money and establishes the budgeting process, and the designer. So the designer, and I always used to think, oh, you're a head electrician, you always work with the lighting designer.
Right.
And in today's world, and the reality is, now I work almost as much and very closely with the set designers. It's what we're finding more and more. The set designers actualizing what happens on the stage, and the elements that are inside of sets are getting more and more wiring and more practicals inside of those sets. And that's a big part of what we do. Our primary focus is with the lighting designer, always.
Right.
No, we never lose track of that, always. Right. But the set designs and achieving those set designs, some of those are huge. Some of those things, like what I think of the Stratford Festival, it's at the Festival Theatre, but the Chicago, there's an explosion of practicals in a show like that.
Right.
Several years ago, we did Jesus Christ Superstar. And that was the set designer that wanted those bulbs everywhere in that show.
Right.
So it depends on the design, and that is my job, to see what's in the design and make that happen, and then find out who are the people that are going to make those, allocate those things, and make it happen.
Well, and that job of making sure that everything fits together has changed over the years because, well, when you and I first met, which I think was probably around the time that you were in Guelph,
that's right.
You know, it wasn't like you were going to wire up, how many thousands of LED fixtures into a set, right? It was a completely different world than it is today. And you mentioned Chicago, and we should definitely talk to Mick McDonald sometime. But what they're doing there is pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing that a point that I want to make is, as being the person that coordinates all these things, I never stop researching and learning.
Right.
I will call people, and I will keep myself on top of all the technologies. I try very hard not to tell the designers, hey, we should do this. That's not my role.
Right.
But I will bring a suggestion to the table all the time. When I think of some of the finest designers that I work with, and we work with a lot of excellent designers, my role is to say, okay, you're trying to do this. What about something like this or this or this? and to have a grab bag of ideas.
Right.
So that then the designer can very easily pick something. Each designer works in a different way. Some designers are very, very, no, I'm looking for this, and this, and I'd like you to figure out how to do this. Some designers are, could you please present to me the whole thing?
Right. Right.
And there's a wide range in there. We don't usually, we're not usually given, oh yeah, you guys just figure this all out. That's not usually the way it is. Our role is to suggest. Our role is to come up with. The other thing is let's really face facts. There's a budgetary constraint to everything.
For sure.
The Stratford Festival is a larger organization, but we recycle everything.
Right.
We take something that we've done once, and then we don't throw it away. We fix it, or we pull it out of a set, and it doesn't look the same the next year. But we then, once we buy it, we then put it into another set in another way. Or, I'm thinking about Rocky Horror, which was everything that was in the lab boxes in Rocky. The name of that game was, okay, there's these 2 storage boxes of all of our leftover bits.
Right.
Wire them from that stuff.
Right.
And that's what it was. There were, we didn't go and buy 12 meters of LED tape for this and 5 meters of LED tape for this,
right,
and 16 of these and 24 of these. It was, how much do we have left of that? And so if you look at them, they are mismatched, and they don't all, but it was perfectly suited to the pieces.
Right, right. So at the Avon, you usually have 4 shows per season. Is that right?
It's been 4 shows for the last several seasons, and sometimes it's 3 shows. So
right.
3 or 4 shows.
And so how many different lighting designers would you be working with at that point?
Usually 3 or 4.
Right.
So yeah, usually, and then we work in repertory theater, which means that those shows are going to alternate on the stage. Once they're all built and running, we will often have a different show on in the evening from the matinee. So the trick for us is during tech. So once everything's running and smooth, it's great. It's nice and easy. During tech, almost always we will have had a show on the night before. We will put a show on to tech something, and then we'll have another show on. So we'll have as many as 3 changeovers in one day.
Right.
Broadway's no question. Broadway has higher production values than we have. They have bigger budgets specific to those. Our biggest challenge is, how do we put the same caliber of show on, but be able to take it on and off the stage very quickly?
Right. Right. So
we have to be able to keep that in mind always. How do we get it off the stage fast?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I wonder if, I know that obviously people who are avid theater goers and are at Stratford every year, they recognize the fact that there's multiple shows happening on these stages, but I'm not sure that they really have any sort of an idea as to how that happens. And, you walk in, you see one show in the afternoon for the matinee, then you go for dinner, you come back, and it's completely different set on stage. Everything is you're in a different world. It's pretty incredible. And, you've been gracious enough to let me hang around to watch some of the changeovers, and it's pretty impressive. It's pretty cool.
We have a number of our longtime stagehands and employees that we'd like to share our time for that. We want to open that up to people, because that's one of the things that we're the most proud of. Because, when we did the Chronicles of Narnia, that floor had to disappear. That stone, it had to go away. It couldn't have existed. We actually cut the concrete out. We had to slice out the building to make that work.
Wow.
And it shouldn't have been, and there were few other shows that that come to mind, like a pirate ship from Peter Pan.
Yes.
It was an impossible fit.
Right.
But planning and figuring, we found a way to shoehorn it and fit. But then people come backstage after and they think, you're not kidding. It really couldn't fit. There's no possible way that fits.
Yeah.
But that's the difference between live theater and the magic of theaters. How there is if you just put it just like this, it'll fit.
Yeah. 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 It's
Yeah.
pretty awesome. Okay. So that's what you do today. I mentioned earlier that I think that when you and I first met was when you were at the River Run
Yeah.
in Guelph. But you didn't start at the River Run, and you obviously didn't start at the Avon. So where did you start? How did you get into all of this?
So I went to school, McMaster. I was going to go be a lawyer or something. I can't.
Okay.
And
Greg Bride, the lawyer, eh?
yeah.
Wow.
I'm glad I didn't follow that path. Um, and I fell backwards into theater. There was an apprenticeship program to help pay off your OSAP or something, and so I just kept working with the technical director there, and there was always work. And he'd say, "Hey, yeah, I know your grant's over, but will you come back and work?" And I thought, "Oh,
Cool.
sure. I don't want to do this for a living, but sure, you know." And then there just was always work for me. And then I went Theatre on the Grand in Fergus. Went to
Oh,
work
yeah.
up there.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful little heritage building up there.
Yeah.
And then I went out in the world a little bit, and went out with some bands and little small things. And then I did work at the River Run Centre. There's house technicians there, and did the lighting, River Run Centre. And then I really missed the craft of theater. I wanted to build shows and polish shows. And so I had my sights set on the Stratford Festival. And I thought,
So just to be clear, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but just to be clear, the River Run Center, what makes the River Run different than, say, the Avon is that it's more of a roadhouse theater is kind of the slang that gets thrown around, right?
yeah. Yeah, so we worked on concerts. We worked on symphonies. We did some theater, a couple theater, and dance. That's was a part of my background at university.
Right.
But everything was set today, do the show, and gone tomorrow.
Right.
A lot of that. So that's what the Roadhouse life was like. And there's a lot of work. Back in those days, it was more than 400 shows in a year
Right.
at the River Run Center. More than a show a day.
Right.
Now there's more than one space there, and it was good. I worked with some good people, and met some excellent artists. And there's a couple of dance festivals there that were excellent in the small space that I still miss.
Yeah.
But I wanted an opportunity to polish.
Right.
And, there was only one or two pieces of theater there. And I wasn't sure how that was going to happen because the Stratford Festival just doesn't have put your application in here and you can become a head electrician tomorrow.
Right. Right.
So I had to create a path to that. And part of that was to come working in Stratford part-time and picking up. And so that started slow. And then I found out that there was a possible job opening. One of the head electricians was taking a leave of absence. And so I applied.
Right.
And I got it. And it was only 1 year.
Now, it's the same union in Guelph as it is in Stratford. So that kind of helped you with that path that you were taking, I would think.
To be perfectly clear, or to be perfectly transparent, my move to Guelph was partly in thinking of eventually maybe Stratford.
Sure.
So,
sure.
I thought, okay, yeah, I didn't really want to work in summer stock forever. So, okay, well, maybe that would work out. But, I didn't know how all the steps would come together. But I thought, okay, well, that might be the first step along the way and get to know some of how the other stagehands work and see, will that work? Can I work part-time?
Right.
You really need to get to know, the other people that you're working with.
Yeah.
And it did.
Yeah.
Work out.
No, that's good. So which theater were you in at when the head electrician was taking a leave of absence?
Well, it turned out to be the Avon Theatre.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I worked for a year at the Avon Theatre, and I thought it was 1 year and that was it.
Right.
And it was 1 year, and then my year was up, and Bruno came back, and then I tried just working at Stratford as a head carpenter.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And then I went away. I couldn't. The rates in Stratford are very good. It's a very good rate of pay, but I went out on the road again to say no. I need to do lighting, and I did some ridiculous things with computerized lighting boards and creating some things. I went to Banff,
Sure.
just to make to make some things and be creative with things. And then I got the call from Bruno again to say, hey, I'm thinking about taking another year off. And I thought, well, all right, I'll see if I can find a replacement for myself for the what I'm on before I say anything. And so I was able to find a replacement. And so I said, okay, well, I'll go back. Well, then Bruno just didn't ever come back to the position.
Right.
So here I am, like, I don't know, 12 years later, still in the same job. And I really love the work. I love the challenge of it. Yeah. It's changed a lot even since I've taken over. But we've overhauled the lighting system. We've overhauled the networking system. We've done a lot, and taken shows all over the place with Stratford. So having experience with that was a real asset for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I think that one of the things that's interesting though is that you're in a position. I mean, the reality is that there's only so many positions like yours in Canada, right?
There really, yeah.
There just are, because there's only so many Avon Theatres in Canada, doing what, like you said, producing shows and creating a certain level of theater, right? There just is. Canada is only so big when it comes to theater. But it wasn't that you just all of a sudden, took that path of I'm going to go to school here and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do this. You had to kind of do a little bit, take a couple steps forward, maybe take a step in a different direction, not necessarily back, but in a different direction, and then back, kind of correcting your career path along the way, I guess. Because I know you mentioned earlier on about doing some programming and different things. Some of the things you did on tour, I would think, you and I have had conversations about some of that stuff before, whether it was with some of the live acts, that kind of thing, that I can see some of those same sorts of things in the work that you do today, right?
Yeah, I have an exact concrete example for this.
Okay.
I was working with a band called Scrap Arts Music, and it's one of my favorites that I went out with. It was like 5 drummers, and it was a great act to work with. And one of the challenges for that was getting, it was a handful of moving lights, but we didn't have very much time. The schedule was written before I signed on with them.
Right.
Well, that same concept was applied when we took Jesus Christ Superstar from Stratford to La Jolla, California.
Right.
Stratford wasn't used to taking moving lights out on transfers.
Right.
But I had the system down where I could take 6 moving lights in a small little band. The same thing happened when I took my 12 moving lights for Jesus Christ Superstar.
Right.
I rewrote my positions, and I had my bass positions. And as long as those positions were set and they were correct, the rest of the show was set and correct.
Right.
So I called it focusing and moving the moving lights. So if I had my bass positions correct, I could adjust them until they were physically in the right spots. And now we know people that do all this the time, we know that this is called palletization.
Yeah.
But I just move them, and the guys at La Jolla were like, well, why don't you just do this through the console? I'm like, leave it to me, because I got this. Mm-hmm. And it worked. Mm-hmm. We were ready to go. We had such a short period of time, and all my Vari-Lights they were all there. And it's the same. I mean, rock and roll does it all the time, but Stratford isn't rock and roll.
Right.
Stratford we don't have the experience of touring, not like a Broadway touring production. That's not something that we're long in experience with. And so now that last year when we took Coriolanus to Dartmouth, now we've got easy ways. We've got it worked out, but that first time taking Jesus Christ Superstar we had to invent the wheel,
Yeah.
And it was terrific that I'd had that under my belt.
Yeah.
To do that. I didn't lose sleep over it. I wasn't stressed about it. I knew that we could do that. I knew that myself and my assistant we'd get it, and we were ready. And we had a heavy hitter of a lighting designer. It was Hal Binkley, and you know what? He wanted it ready to go, and we were ready for him.
Right.
We were queuing like right away. So as soon as the set was done, we were ready to go.
Yeah, so, that's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So you've been there for 12 years? You're going to be there for 12 more?
Well, I think so. Yeah. Well, what was it? I always forget the dates. 2005 was my first year that I was there, and then I was away, and then back again. So I think it was 2007 that I started back. So I think that's about 12 years. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's a pretty great position to be in.
Yeah. Well, and then another point is that when I first started there were two guys that shared all the shows. And now it's not just two guys. Now there's a department, and there's men and women in the department, and there's diversity of age in the department. And now it's a team of like 12 of us.
Right.
So the explosion of the technologies, there's video now is very much involved. And there's now so many more people involved. Right. It's not two people trying to do all the shows, and you have to be there for every single show. Now there's, it's a much bigger team. There's a lot more people involved.
Greg worked very hard for years to get to the position that he's in today. And his approach to his job at the Avon and the leadership that he provides within the IATSE local has had a significant impact on the shows in Stratford, but also to the culture behind the scenes. Collaboration and planning for the future are always on Greg's mind. If you'd like to know more about the Stratford Festival, you can find them at stratfordfestival.ca. If you're interested in more information on the IATSE crew that works behind the scenes on every Stratford performance, you can find them at iatse357.ca. You can find more Resource Stage Conversations at resourcestage.ca. Resource Stage Conversations is a production of Horizon Solutions. Horizon has the privilege to work with professional and amateur theatres and schools across Canada to provide technical solutions for live performance, and now, more than ever, live streaming. You can find out more about Horizon at horizonsolutions.net. If you have any questions or suggestions of someone you think we should talk to, please email us at conversations@resourcestage.ca. I'm Carl Lukings. Thank you for joining us for Resource Stage Conversations.